Yeah. Welcome back to the PT Graduate Podcast. My guest today, Kaytee Boyd. Hi, Kaytee.
Good morning.
Great to see
Good
you.
morning. Great to see you too, Rich. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Great to be able to pin you down and find a time. I know you're busy, and I know what you do is very important in terms of looking after your clients and the people that come to see you. But we'll touch on some of that stuff. But I think let's start with that, and we can always go backwards and forwards because I want to hear a little bit about the biking career as well, because I don't know as much about that. I don't think so, and that will be good for our listeners because often people will go into I suppose follow a career path that may have been started when they were quite young, because it dovetails in quite well. So the list of things that you deal with is enormous in terms of the people that you work with, and I can rattle a few of them off, and maybe we can talk about some of them. But I suppose the big one, and the one I've got here, is the cancer coaching, which is massive. You've obviously got the chronic fatigue people with gut issues, which leads into autoimmune, I suspect. Cardiovascular, you do some genetic testing, deal with the neurological side of things, and the challenges people may have, hormonal imbalances, musculoskeletal. So those are probably more in my wheelhouse, and as is metabolic stuff. And I noticed you're also a Checkie, so you've done some full check work previously.
Yes, way back in the day. So when I was at uni, my first year, I I started working at Les Mills and did PT courses and strength conditioning, and that's when I met Paul.
Right.
So, and that was, gosh, it would have been like 2000.
Yeah. Okay.
Susie Neville, do you know Susie Neville, who she lectures for? Yes, so that's kind of where I started my extension of exercise, I guess, in the functional area.
And was it that study at Otago that you did that sort of fed you? I know obviously you've got the bike stuff as well, but was it that sort of fed you down the path that you're on now? Is that where it started, or did you sort of go and actually I want to do that?
No, yeah, it's a good question, because I think the biking. So I raced BMX when I was 5. That's when my dad got me into BMX racing. He dragged my brother along because it was the only way to wear me out. I think if I hadn't had an ADHD diagnosis back then, I would have been heavily medicated, I'm sure, though my parents wouldn't have let that happen. But the only way to wear me out was to take me down the BMX track after school. So my dad used to take us both down, and we train for a couple of hours and come home tired.
Fantastic. Perfect. Great parenting.
Oh, it was great parenting. Well, he used to race with us too, and he was in his early 20s, so kind of grew up with us along that train of BMX racing till I was 16. So I retired professionally at 16, and then to university, and I didn't do any biking down there. I did rugby for uni, played touch for uni, did all sorts of other sports, but had I used to do not gymnastics. I used to take aerobics. I'm embarrassed to tell you this.
That's fine.
I used to, when I was 15, I joined the gym because I knew that for BMX racing, you had to get a bit more explosive. So I joined the local gym, and for pocket money, I'd clean the gym afterwards. So after school, I'd clean the gym, and then got into teaching step. So back then, I don't know if people will still remember step aerobics.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, I started teaching that, and then it was great because when I went to Otago, I got a job at the local university gym, and then got a job at Les Mills. So was able to kind of start getting some income, and then did personal training. So I didn't pick up road cycling or mountain biking or track until I'd well finished university.
Okay.
So I was a late starter, but I think because of the BMX racing, like, you never lose those bike skills. Yeah,
very transferable. And you got into mountain biking and did pretty well in the mountain biking. I just read I think it was a Herald article about a an event that you went to at the last minute, and you thought it was shorter than it was going to be. It ended up being 6 hours on someone else's bike, and you won it.
Oh, it was hard out. It was so much fun though, Rich, because when I finished Otago, the boyfriend I was with at the time got the All Blacks contract, and so I helped him, and we moved up to Auckland, and I did the WAGs, the wives and girlfriends, and obviously most of the time
Yeah.
you get good habits when you get the girlfriends involved and the wives, because they're the ones that do the cooking. Anyway, I was getting bored. Not that that wasn't great fun, but I had my own clinic and I really just needed something else. And a friend down the road had a free mountain bike and asked me if I wanted to go for a ride.
Mm.
I mean, oh yeah, let's do it. So we did a little ride around Devonport, because that's where we were living at the time,
Yeah.
up the hills. And
Yeah.
it's cool. So she took me out to Woodhill, and then must have been like a couple of months later, said,
Mm.
oh, I think it was some race in Coromandel. I can't remember what it was called, like the White Star or Intrigue or something.
Mm.
And put me in the put me in the long event. So all I had was, I think, a pump bottle and a banana stuffed down my bra
Crikey.
and a pair of shorts. And oh man, I had the worst chafing. Yeah. But anyway, and I think once I got started, it was so much fun. And every checkpoint I came across, obviously, oh my God, how much further to go? And the people would say, you're only about an eighth there. What? Well, are you sure? And I guess once you get into it, you just kind of put your big girl pants on and
Mm.
see, like, oh, okay, well, if I've got that far to go, how many people are in front of me?
Mm.
And they were really great. So they'd help me, like, oh, there's about 3 women in front of you. So I
Okay.
think competitive edge just got the better of me.
Clearly, it's served you well, because you got into the track cycling as well and the team events, and you got to the Olympics, right?
And the road cycling I started because I got into the New Zealand mountain bike team, and they said that road cycling was a really good kind of combination because you're getting a really good base.
Right.
So I started racing that first season. My coach, Silas Cullen, I don't know if anyone knows him, he's awesome. I had to get a coach because I didn't know what I was doing, and he
Yep.
put me in nationals race and I came third. And I didn't know about bunch racing. I didn't know anything. And I think it was just a little bit of enthusiasm. And anyway, so I got third and then ended up in the New Zealand team and was racing mountain bike and rode for New Zealand. And then we went to France and raced a season in France for New Zealand.
Right.
And then a Power to the Podium program started, which
Yes.
the track cycling was looking for people. So there was rowers, cyclists from other different kind of sports, and they
Mm.
just tried us out. I think it was down anyway. It was somewhere on a wooden track, and it was so much fun, and I was hooked.
Mm. Mm.
That's kind of how I got into track cycling and was there for a couple
Yeah.
of years. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Commonwealth Games, and I got quite sick. I got glandular fever before there was a world's trial, and the team would have gone to the Olympics. So I just wasn't very well for a
Mm.
couple of months before that. So
Mm.
I missed
Oh, okay. Okay.
it.
Okay. But still, were you at Beijing? Is that right?
No, that's the Olympics.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that
So
was around the same sort of time.
2 years later, so
Mm.
the Commonwealth Games were 2010, and they
Mm.
were in, God, I can't even remember, in India. It must be my perimenopausal brain,
Yeah, I
but
remember. I remember. I don't
yes.
remember the name, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh, we had a great time. It was fantastic. So I met lots of different sports, people. It was really fun. But
Mm. Mm.
it's definitely, I think, being in a professional athlete does have its limitations in regards to, you really do miss out on a lot of life. And I'm really grateful for those experiences. I feel now, as someone working with people all day, every day, this is so much more rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just,
So
yeah,
tell us a bit more about it. So that list sort of gives people an idea of the sorts of the sorts of things you're challenged with or tackling with in terms of your clients. What started this off in the first place in terms of that interest in nutrition and a much deeper level of nutrition than I think the general public might normally be expecting when they talk to a nutritionist?
it's a good question. I think my mum was a nurse, and we would walk home from school up to the hospital where she worked, and we would feed the patients while we were waiting for her to finish,
Right.
both me and my mother. And so we were exposed to, it was a respite care hospital, usually in palliative care. So we saw
Mm.
all ages of people. The youngest was had quite an impact on me, and I feel back then there must be ways of staying healthy because my grandparents were really healthy. They were
Mm.
very active. They ate well, and it made me start thinking about my own health, and especially with BMX racing.
Mm.
Like I knew from quite a young age that sugar was definitely, I loved it, but it wasn't my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably where it started. But I did have problems with addictions from about 16 to 25, 26. And I think personally, I went to university to try and fix myself first,
Mm.
especially. I'm sure a lot of people say that, and I did find that with psychology.
Right.
In my first year, I had quite a few friends doing psychology, and they definitely had some things to work on. So I think it's probably self motivated to try and
Mm.
figure out pathways of getting yourself well. So it was a combination of optimization and performance, but also how can I help myself and heal myself?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I think that there's always a level of that in the work that people do. When you visit people who are there to help others, often they have a backstory themselves of having gone through some experiences that then equip them even
Mm.
better for what they do in terms of serving their client base.
Totally. And I think when my grandfather went through which should have been a normal procedure when I was a 12 or 13, and the surgery ended up, it was a heart surgery, but it ended up that they accidentally nicked one of the main arteries going to his bowel, and ultimately it caused him to have to use something called TPN, total parental nutrition, so a drip every day. And watching him slowly wither away over the course of the next couple of months was quite heartbreaking.
Mm,
Me a sense of I'm not quite sure if I
mm.
uh, trust hospitals and what doctors and surgeons have to say. So I think it was in a way a healthy level of curiosity that seemed to kind of smolder underneath. Like I need to understand everything, and why things are happening the way that they are. If that
And
makes any sense at all.
yeah, it does make sense. I can see the motivation behind that drive.
Mm.
And you're very much into the latest research in the areas that you're working in. I note that some of your social posts are very good at sort of communicating some of that stuff. Is that same sort of desire to stay current and know the latest thinking on things from that same place? Is it that wanting to do the best job and um, give the client the best possible outcome they can have, essentially?
Always.
Yeah, yeah.
And the great thing about, well, it's a two-pronged perspective, because if you look at the previous BMJ, the British Medical Journal, the previous editor, who actually he decided to quit because there was so much uh, cooperation with pharmaceutical companies, and he felt that the whole industry had been compromised. So
Right.
when it comes to research papers, you don't really know 100% what's really accurate or what's been tampered with.
Hmm.
It's it's really difficult to know the truth. So I feel that it's important to work through the intricacies of that, but also keep it simple. Like, think about as a coach, you've got the basics, which are the base of your pyramid of health: clean air, clean water, clean environment, great friends and good connections. If thinking of longevity, what's the number one for longevity is having a good posse.
Yeah.
Like more than anything, more than what you eat, more than sleep, is longevity is number one. Is how many people you call when you have a problem to talk to. Like, I'm really struggling with this. I just need 5 minutes of time.
That's it. And that goes to that treatment of the whole person, doesn't it? As opposed to what's the symptom, what's the cause. You step back and just take another a broader view and say, well, what else could be missing in the key essentials? And you're so right. And that Harvard study has proven that, hasn't it? In terms of that being the top of the pyramid, really, in terms of our critical needs, or it depends how you look at it, but top or bottom. But without those human connections, the body, the brain, we struggle.
Yes, yeah, it's so true. But and in saying that too, it's fascinating. The part that drives so much curiosity for me is, for example, you think about certain bacterias like Lactobacillus has a specific strain in sourdough. And when a woman's pregnant, the uterus will send signals to the colon to release that bacteria to go to the breast for breast milk,
Right.
To be used to help the baby's microbiome. Like, there's so much good research into these funny things that we would, like you think about 1,000 years ago or a couple of 100 years ago, all of the things that we used to do, where now having scientific evidence to back up all of the things that our great grandparents known for, forever.
How did they get it so right so soon? And it's taken us a need for evidence to prove that they were right in the first place.
Correct. Well, I think, are you left brain or more right brained? Those more right brain people.
I am certainly more left.
Yes, me too. So I think part of this is we have intuition, right? And those that may be more right brain orientated have way more gut feel, or maybe not, but from my perspective, from clients that I've worked with who are much more in tune with their body, they know. And those that are more atypical have to have scientific evidence, need to see it. And that's totally cool too. So I think our trial and error of, let's eat this mushroom and see what happens, and someone dies. Okay, that is a poisonous mushroom. Versus nowadays where, okay, so we've got this evidence, and this is the toxicology profile of this mushroom, so therefore it's not safe to eat.
Yeah. So probably they were experimenting. It was trial and error at that stage. There's no clear record of the number of people that may have died because of particular practices, but they got it right at some point. And that would then have sort of filtered down generations, as it used to do, to the point where now we don't sort of have those typical practices anymore, because families don't live together like they used to. And it's gone full circle where we've then gone, oh, look at the research, it works.
Yeah, totally. Well, you look at some of the beautiful cultures around the world, and how if something really important needs to be passed on, it may come as a story. So it may be passed on in a story that relates to some sort of emotional or physiological benefit. So I think like the Aborigines do that, and I know some really great Māori stories where they've used story to increase awareness on some sort of historical event. So yeah, I think different cultures have, and we would too, like my Bohemian side definitely has stories, and Vikings have stories that relate to certain parts of history. So I think
Yeah.
I think we're just becoming a lot more or less nature bound. We don't breathe our biome as much as we used to.
Mm, mm,
Our gut microbiome, for example, is thousands of species or hundreds of species less than what it used to be
mm.
in a couple of 100 years ago. So, you know, we're not out in nature as much. We're not in having our hands in soil as much, which I think is to the detriment of our whole body. You
Yeah.
know, I think we're 4 million genes of us are microbiome, our gut
Right.
bacteria,
Wow.
our mouth, our anus, our ears,
Mm,
our eyes. Not that there's much in there, but our breast, our uterus. So, you know, I think there was like I can't remember when it was, but there was some interesting work done quite some time ago about the genome complexity paradox. And they couldn't figure out why, for example, rice had something like 46,000 genes and humans only had like 25,000. And why are we so complex? And they figured out that it was because of our microbiome. So our microbiome makes this great, massive extent of additional genes, like 4 million. So we really do have to look after them. And our environment is completely destroying that incredibly important species. Like, it is so important. From about 2017, there's been some great research looking at the microbiome and how important it is for immunotherapy to work. So this
mm.
is a type of treatment
Yes.
for cancer.
Yes.
So since 2017, I have tried to get a lot of my clients to do stool samples before they go through treatment, but obviously
Right.
half the time it takes, if you're on antibiotics or probiotics, you have to have a 2-week stand down period, and then you have to have 6 weeks until results come back. So it does take
Right.
quite a significant amount of time.
Mm, mm.
So Jason Williams is a brilliant, he's an oncologist and a radiographer in America and Mexico. And he really has opened up my eyes to how important the microbiome is. So he actually asks his patients to do fecal transplants
Right.
before he starts his treatment plan. Like, that's
Right.
how important it is. So it can be the difference between your treatment being successful and not, is your microbiome,
Mm, mm.
and is expensive. So immunotherapy is like, it's eye-watering. So you really want to make the most of what you can by trying to kind of optimize that gut bacteria.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I understand that to this point, the percentage of success that people have with immunotherapy is still pretty low. Because my mother went through it last year, and that makes sense, right? If the microbiome isn't primed, then that success rate is just going to come screaming down. So totally logical to prepare it so that you can increase your chances of it actually being useful for you.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm,
There was a paper in, I think, 2019 looking at the tumor microbiome diversity and composition influences of pancreatic cancer outcomes, and it was remarkable. And there's another one looking at melanoma, and they call them PDL1, which or PD1 therapy, which is Keytruda. Like, it's just one of the drugs. And that was, I think, back in 2019. No, actually, I think it was over 2021, maybe.
okay.
Anyway, there's more and more coming out now about the importance of the microbiome. And I cannot stress enough, anyone who's dealing with cancer diagnosis, get your gut sorted out. It's paramount.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of us, really. Like,
Mm,
even long COVID, there's some research looking into bifidobacterium, which is, we usually have a lot of it when we're born, if we're C-section, and if we're not C-section
not
baby.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're vaginally born, and it just starts to decline as we get older unless we do something about it. And
Okay.
so there's some research looking into how that can affect the way and how often we get sick and how we may be more exposed to SARS-CoV-2 or have issues with it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting stuff. Would
Gone
that
sideways.
no, this is where I was hoping to go. This is great.
Cool.
Would that be the common denominator with that list that I read out earlier? The microbiome.
In what way?
The
I
fact that
think
it would play a part in almost all of those things in some way or another.
Everything. It is the cornerstone. It's the cornerstone. You think about how many children now are going on to Accutane or like doxycycline, and they just have a messed up gut. And they do doxycycline, which completely annihilates your good commensal bacteria, and then you end up worse off than you were before. So think about, at the moment, Consumer Magazine did this great article a while ago looking at the amount of Roundup in our food sources and pesticide residues.
Yeah.
Oats, even our Haraway's oats has Roundup, and Roundup is a weed killer that can completely annihilate your good bacteria, and it can cause leaky gut, and it can give the same symptoms of celiac. So it's a major. So when we're thinking about our gut microbiome, we have to think about what we're putting in our mouths. If you're using water that's been chlorinated, so you want to get at least a slightly filter if you can.
Yeah.
So gut microbiome is massive. If you're on the oral contraceptive pill, that will reduce it. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. It take months to years to rebalance the gut microflora after one lot of antibiotics.
Right.
So it can take a significant amount of time, but you can make a difference within 24 hours. Like it can change within the course of a day.
Okay.
So here's the things you can do.
Yes.
Time restricted eating has been shown to be quite helpful. So eating at the same time every day, increasing your fiber intake. So there's been research published, if you're doing, I actually like to say 3 to 5 plant foods with each of your main meals. Yep. So for example, you have scrambled eggs for breakfast, right? Fry up a small bit of onion, add some garlic or some turmeric, and then chuck in some mushrooms or one other vegetable that you really like when you're doing your omelette. Sweet, done. Lunch, leftovers. So think about 3 to 5 different plants that you'd love to eat, and you'd add that into whatever food that you're having for lunch. The other thing would be polyphenols. So polyphenol intake, you want to about 200, 300 milligrams per 100 grams. What does that look like? That would be things like adding a handful of blueberries in your breakfast, or having them as a snack, even if they're frozen with some yogurt or something like that. It would be, this might, okay, so I love this, but it's a bit controversial in the cancer space, is using things like pomegranate juice. Pomegranates are amazing. The bioflavonoids are great for increasing a species called Akkermansia nuciphilia. And we've only just kind of in the last couple of years been able to test for this specific bacteria in a stool sample. It's related to longevity, but it's really critical when it comes to cancer. Anything that shows a good response or not, well, it's not the only thing, but it's quite important. So I've been trying to get my clients to use a dried variety, like just a dried pomegranate powder, and black currant is excellent. So think in New Zealand, like the Carans is a great black currant powder, or you can get it in capsule, and you know them from we actually used to take them when we were racing bikes, because they so we used to have to do back in the day, the only track cycle, or the only velodrome they had in New Zealand was in Invercargill, and there was a juice bar just out of town. So I used to ride there before training, and I'd have to drink a litre of beetroot juice to get the same sort of effect as what you get with just a small amount of concentrate or with
Right.
blackcurrant powder.
Right.
I recommend it. I recommend it. But when you're vying for spaces in a team, you'll do everything that you can. So back on the polyphenols. So things like we've talked about black currants, blueberries, black elderberries. So elderberry concentrate, which is also good for immune function.
Yeah.
Things like any berries, so cherries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, even plums, dark plums, flax meal, black tahini. Black tahini is great. So hazelnuts. I love black tahini. You can get it in glass jars and you just dip, squizzle over your salads or mix it into your salad things. Things like that. Purple carrots, which you can buy from markets and from some organic shops. Purple carrots are excellent. Will stain your teeth. That's why you know that they're rich. They're super rich in polyphenols.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Excellent. It's good. And same process for dinner, I presume, in terms of that sort of that same focus. Yeah, just carry it through the day.
Absolutely. Yep, that's the one.
The
interesting too is adding things like prebiotic fibers. So there was a paper published looking at how you can get your microbiome back to the way it was the sooner. And the fastest way to do it was to drink. I'm not saying this is good for everyone to do, because if you have problems with histamines, you cannot use fermented foods. It will just cause you a horrendous amount of issues. But this research paper looked at 1 cup of kvass, KVASS, and it's the juice from beetroot fermentation or sauerkraut, so the cabbage juice, and you drink that with each main meal. So that actually improved the microbiome diversity and like the volume the fastest.
Interesting. It's quite a list, and I've tried to capture as much as I can because I think that's really useful. Going back to your TRE, is there a particular window that you recommend for people, or does it depend on the person in terms of the timing around the clock?
So yeah, it depends on the person. So for example, did you do pH 360?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So for anyone listening, ph360.me is actually a really good website. And part of the research in this was to create body types corresponding to your size, your shape, your hair color, your skin color. And I actually really like it. I think it's fantastic. There's specific people in there who we would call more naturally hypervigilant, more anxious. They'd be list takers. They're detail orientated. They are really sensitive to their environment. For them, fasting would be a really big deal, and I wouldn't recommend it until you get their blood glucose sorted, which is from anxiety. So depending on your body type, I would say would depend on if you do time restricted feeding. It may just be that you eat the same time every day.
Stick to a regime. Have you noticed any changes in the issues that you're seeing since the last few years, particularly relating to the C word, but I mean COVID, not cancer. Or do you see the trend being the same in terms of the mix of things that you're dealing with?
This is quite probably more of a sensitive area to talk about, because I've seen more cancer than I've ever seen in my 2 decades of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been frightening and completely overwhelming. So, and there's probably only a handful that haven't had any Pfizer shots. So I'm really worried, because it just seems to be getting worse. So I don't know if it's a subject that want to talk about on here, but it's definitely something that a few oncologists and doctors and I are having to kind of maneuver ourselves around at the moment. Yeah, it's scary.
Well, the World Health Organization declared stress as an epidemic, didn't it?
Yep, and it
I
is.
think,
It definitely
yeah,
is an
yeah.
epidemic. But yeah, there's definitely something more than that going on here. Don't quite know. There's quite a lot of research in this space. I've been saving the papers, so
Okay,
I'm working my way through those at the moment, and it's not looking that great.
right, right.
Mm.
So there's a number of different factors, aren't there? You can't pin it down to one particular thing and just go, oh, it's stress related.
I tell you what's interesting is usually if you ask people, why do you think you've got cancer? They 20% will pin it down to something specific. If you look at the Radical Remission docuseries or the work from Kelly Turner, her research is fantastic, and she wrote a book called Radical Remission, obviously, looking at the 10 different things that all of these people that she'd interviewed all over the world had common traits with why they ended up with radical remission. And she didn't call it spontaneous because they actually worked hard to change the prognosis. And one of them was reducing stress and like figuring out how to become more in tune with your body. So listening to your intuition. It was rapidly changing your diet. Quite a few really fantastic things in there. Another really good book to look into is Nasha Winter's Metabolic Approach to Cancer. Now, in that book, she talks about there's 10 different areas, and it's fantastic because this is what I try and get everyone to do their questionnaire on. Number 1, genetics and epigenetics. Number 2, blood sugar balance. Number 3, toxic burden. Number 4, microbiome and digestive issues or function. Number 5, immune function. Number 6, inflammation. Number 7, blood circulation and angiogenesis. Number 8, almost there, hormone balance. Number 9, stress and biorhythms. And number 10 is mental and emotional health. So the stress comes under one of those 10 factors. So yes, it is, but it's definitely not. It's as for some.
Sure. Nasha Winter, did you say?
Nasha Winters.
Winters. Brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah. I feel like I could just keep digging and digging and digging, but the clock is ticking, and I'm sure there are lots of other things to be doing. So maybe I can start to wind up with what I usually ask is sort of those businessy sort of questions that are about, longevity of business, things that have stood the test of time for you so that you can keep doing what you're doing. What sort of things do you do in the background so that the business just continues so well?
Surfing.
Love it.
I think surfing just for my mental health.
Yeah.
Because, it's pretty massive. And when you're working with people, you want to give them everything that you can. And surfing is definitely up there. So it's really good at the moment in Taupo Bay. So
Okay. Don't tell everyone.
No, I don't tell everyone. But yeah, no, I do try and surf, and we've got a really great community out here, so we try and catch up with everyone when we can. So yeah, that's part of it. But I think it evolves too. Like, what about you? How do you keep your business?
Like going back to the left brain thing, for me, it's sort of having systems and processes that once I know they work, I just keep working the system. And that's kind of where I was going with the question, and you went straight to self-care, and I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I've got this slightly off, but I do, I do swim, I do run, I do look after myself. So, I think those things are an absolute given, and whatever your flavor you know, whether it's the green
Mm.
forest or the blue forest, or you know, wherever you get your ions rebalanced,
Yes.
and all those other things is absolutely critical. But you know, I think if some of those business things aren't in place, then all that stuff's lovely, but if you haven't
Mm.
got people coming in the door, then there isn't really a business there. But obviously your reputation and what you do and how you do it comes before you. People realize that you're the expert in that space. I suppose that's really where I was thinking. And how did that occur? Is it the people that you know, the referral network and so on?
Well, it's funny. I'll tell you how I got to that answer is because usually for the last couple of decades, I have put other people first. So it's always been about their need is greater than mine. And with anything in life, you make a choice. So it's only been the last little while that I've had to spend a little bit more time recharging because I can't give what I need to give. And the research is so overwhelming sometimes that a little bit of a break, some respite means I'm back and I'm like shining as much as possible, like
Yeah.
So that's the part. And I think maybe it's only because I'm old now, Rick.
No, you're not.
Well, I mean, in regards to I was saying this to Andre, my partner, last night, is that like, I had a client yesterday and there's no way I would have been able to pinpoint exactly what's going on with them 5 years if they'd seen me 5 years previously. So
Interesting.
this accumulation of knowledge is constant. So I've got great mentors. Dr. Paul Anderson, who is, I think he's one of the most amazing doctors in the world. So we do a round table with him once a month. Dr. William Walsh is mental health. So I look his work, his previous work leads on to genetic susceptibilities, and I'm waffling, but all of this information you're just accumulating, and then all of a sudden something like, remember that person that you had 2 years ago? That's it. So you go over their file and might ring them up and go, look, I figured it out.
Yeah.
So it's and it's not an easy fix sometimes. So yeah, like, you win some, you lose some, but I think with the chronic pain or chronic inflammatory issues, I think I'm just starting to really get a handle on all the pathways and bits and pieces in between. So it only happens through experience and learning from world-leading experts. And I feel really privileged with that part. So
brilliant. Yeah. So I think the takeaway for me is surrounding yourself with the right people.
Always. And they're so intelligent that I have to sometimes write it down, go away and research it. Oh, that's what you're meaning.
Translate it for yourself.
Totally. So surround yourself with very amazing, incredible people, people that you trust and that their values and morals are grounded in what's best, instead of how can I financially benefit from the situation. So I think that's something else that I've really had to be careful with it when it comes to cancer, especially.
Right. Yeah, that's a tricky one. And I guess that comes back to that what's our purpose? What's my purpose? It's to be in service, isn't it?
Always.
But sustainably, so that you can stay in service.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Is there any question I haven't asked, Kaytee?
I can't think of anything, but I tell you what, Rich, I'm sure this will either ruffle some feathers or hopefully someone might get something useful out of it. And I think that the big takeaway is that we're here to try and help as many people as we can. And that's where our values and morals are, is in service to others. So like, I really respect you and think what you're doing is amazing, and thank you for having me.
Wow, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say so. I think exactly the same, with the work that you do is life-changing and life-saving. And you make a big difference. So yeah, likewise. Thank you. And thank you for your time today. I do appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Just before I stop recording, I just want to ask you where people can find you. I know obviously you've got the Boyd Clinic website. Is that probably the best place to be able to find you?
Well, there's a bit of a story about that, yes, but it's an old website that I haven't had a chance to look at, and the phone number on there is not my phone number anymore. So I look at I think maybe probably Instagram.
Insta.
Yeah, Insta. The website's there, but just don't expect big things.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
don't try to contact me.
Well, I'll put the Insta link into the show notes because there's always good gems on there, and it's nice and easy to be able to contact people that way as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you for your time.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.